Roll call vote, or not a vote, a roll call.
Councilmember Crompton. Emerling Baker.
Here.
Happy.
Here.
Keller.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Seeger.
Here.
Mayor Fallon.
Here.
All right, so the first item on the work session is a discussion of the finance department. Council has instructed the city administrator to present options how the city finance department could be structured, comparing duty arrangements and costs of having a high-level finance position in-house or contracted. Presented are department background information, organizational charts, duty arrangements, and cost comparisons with notes / recommendations from the city administrator. Also added just with an email through a few hours ago, as well as hard copies in front of you. My response to some questions Councilor Seeger had as well. It's quite a bit of information. How does council want to proceed in discussing this?
Well, this wasn't included in the packet.
Correct.
Right.
So Bernard's questions, I think that he said after receiving.
Correct. Yeah, I didn't get until this morning. Yeah.
Okay. You guys. Morning.
The questions, yeah.
So I'm curious, what does that mean, 2-11:3 FTE? 1-18 2.5 FTE?
The way I interpreted that from his question was the date, so 2/11 would be February 2011.
Okay.
Got it.
Which I think is at a time when Bernard was city administrator. Bernard, is that correct?
That is correct. That chart is basically a chronology of the finance office's staffing from the time I left to current. And then, from what I understand, the staff report, what's being proposed by the city administrator.
Thanks, Bernard.
But Bernard, do you want to go, you've got quite a few questions here, and do you have a copy of the responses?
Yeah, I was just looking them over. Just saw that email and went over those. So yes, I did. If I could, Madam Mayor, my recommendation for this item would to have the city administrator kind of take us through the history of the finance office. I tried to give him a little background from, when I was there, and then try to lay out the groundwork for kind of how we got here and then how he proposes we reconcile some of the shortfalls that we find ourselves with the audit and, things like the sewer utility being in arrears and some of these kind of big moving pieces that frankly inspired me to join council that I hope I could, add some value in us talking through and trying to get resolution to, in the next 5 or so months or 4 or so months. So that would be my recommendation on how we might proceed with this item.
Sound good? Jordan, you want to?
Yeah, so in the packet, I did a breakdown of the history since I've been here, October of 2022, where at the time City Hall was 5.5 FTE, with the city administrator, with direct reports of the finance officer and city recorder, receptionist / cashier, and half-time AP clerk, which was vacant. And then the deputy city recorder reporting to the city recorder. In the structure, the finance officer was responsible for supervising and reviewing utility billing, payroll, preparing the budget, journal entries, bank reconciliations, monthly statements, human resources, IT, and audits. Accounts payable clerk was part-time with the main function of processing accounts payable and utility billing. The receptionist's main duty were frontline customer service, processing cash payments, cemetery, and accounts receivable. City recorder was responsible for records management and planning. Specifically, frontline planning, the technical planning work was done by the contracted planner. The deputy city recorder focused on council agenda, packet and minutes, social media, and assisting the city recorder as needed. At the time, the finance officer was 4 months into the position and the AP clerk position was vacant. In December of 2022, staff presented and council approved an organizational change to eliminate AP clerk and receptionist position and create a utility billing clerk position. The employee in the receptionist position was moved to the utility billing clerk position. This position is responsible for all aspects of the utility billing process, frontline customer service, accounts receivable, and cemetery. The finance officer took on the duties of AP and payroll, which at that time the position had been doing with the AP clerk position vacant. Then in March of 2023, the finance officer resigned. The city hired now CFO as a contracted third party to provide high-level accounting functions while the city recruited for a finance officer. The recruitment failed to produce any qualified applicants. Thank you. When presenting the 23-24 budget, City Administrator Bennett proposed shifting the finance officer position to an accounting clerk position to handle the day-to-day finance office functions, payroll, AP, monthly statements, bank reconciliations, etc., and keeping a contracted CFO for the high-level accounting functions. The organizational change was approved. The accounting clerk position was filled in August of 2023. The position became vacant again in January 2024. From March 2023 to August 2023, and starting again in January 2024, the city recorder was assigned the duties of payroll and accounts payable. CA Bennett has overseen human resources and IT since March 2023. When developing the 24-25 budget, CA Bennett, City Recorder Woosley, and contracted CFO Bondi discussed the duties within the finance department, the time and skills needed to complete those duties, the structure of city hall operations, and the general fund budget. We also discussed the need for long-term financial planning, job description updates, and creating a pay structure. CA Bennett proposed eliminating the accounting clerk position, distributing the duties across the 4 remaining city hall staff, keeping the contracted CFO for high-level functions and hiring a consultant to review job descriptions, organizational structure, and create a pay structure. These changes and projects were approved in the budget. In July 2024, a consultant, HR Answers, was selected to perform the job description and organizational structure review. All staff have met with the consultant to review job tasks and how they fit into the organization. Also, in July 2024, council approved the digital recording of all city meetings as the official minutes. This allowed the deputy city recorder to focus on more productive administrative tasks. After reviewing all aspects, it is recommended that the job titles for city recorder and deputy city recorder be updated to better match their duties and roles within the city. The city recorder will now be called city recorder / administrative services manager, and the deputy city recorder will now be administrative specialist. This takes us to the present day. The job description and internal pay equity reviews are nearly complete, and market studies are in progress, with the creation of the pay structure the final step. City Hall staff are adjusting to new duties with more responsibilities being shifted from the contracted CFO to city staff. What follows are a breakdown of duties for each position, cost comparison of contracted CFO versus in-house budget officer, proposed organizational charts, and CA Bennett recommendations. You want me to flow right into the breakdown of duties? Finance duties breakdown: administrative services manager / city recorder, overall supervision of city hall operations, supervise finance department staff, records management, election officer, frontline planning. This may change with the addition of a possible utility manager or contracting it out to the planner. And then as well as month-end closeout and journal entries. Administrative specialist would still do council agenda and packet preparation, council minutes. They would start doing accounts payable, monthly financial statements, social media, and city hall inventory control. The utility billing clerk will still do utility billing, utility account management, accounts receivable, frontline customer service, daily bank deposits, facility rentals, and calendar update and cemetery management. Yes,
Would it be possible to maybe just know which are new tasks that those people will be performing under this proposed structure change?
correct.
As you're going through those?
Yep.
And I'm sorry to make you back up, but could you start at the top and just maybe highlight the ones that are new that Kathy would be taking on in that?
Yes, for the administrative services manager, overall supervision of city hall operations would be new. Supervising finance department staff would be new. As well as the month-end closeout and journal entries, so the first, second, and the sixth.
And I guess who has been performing those tasks prior to this proposed change?
The top two have been me, and the bottom one has been our contracted CFO.
Thank you.
For administrative specialists, the new tasks would be accounts payable, the monthly financial statements. And just those two would be it.
And who's been doing accounts payable, was that?
City recorder has been doing it. And the contracted CFO has been doing the monthly financial statements.
And what are the monthly financial statements?
Just the breakout of where we're at with revenue versus expenses for each month and then year to date.
And we haven't seen those.
I provided the year end one for 23-24.
We don't see them monthly.
We're gonna start doing.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank you.
you'll get July's next meeting on the 26th. Yeah, we're to the point where you can start providing them monthly.
Thank you.
The utility billing clerk position really does not change. Still do utility billing, account management, accounts receivable, frontline customer service, bank deposits, facility rentals, and cemetery management. It stays relatively unchanged. The contracted CFO or in-house budget officer would focus on budget development, implementation and monitoring, long-term financial forecasting, capital improvement replacement plan, and audits. Right now, I have been handling the budget. Long-term financial forecasting has not been happening, as well as the CIP or CIR. We are beginning to build those, and then the CFO has been doing the audits. Outsourced, currently right now, the city recorder, administrative services manager does payroll. I know that in my answers to Councilor Seeger's questions, we are looking to outsource that. The top candidate right now is ADP for an annual cost of $2,500. So it would free up, not a huge amount, probably 1 to 2 days a week, depending on what's going on. Our payroll, the way it works is the health insurance is only taken out once a month, so one payroll is a little more work than the other one. So we're looking at 1 to 2 days. So it's not much, but it does clear up time, and they would handle PERS, all of the payroll reports with the state. It takes everything out of our hands.
And how much was that gonna be monthly?
2,500 annual.
Yeah, 2,500 annually, so yeah, we're talking $200 a month.
Okay.
Which to me is crazy. I don't know how they make money, but.
So, and just to kind of back up as far as outsourcing payroll, if you're having EDP do it, someone here still has to process it, is that right? But they'd be the ones that actually do the direct deposit and.
Correct, yeah,
Payroll.
we would staff would still fill out their timesheets, supervisors would double check them, we hand them off to ADP or whoever we select, and then the money shows up in the bank. They do, once we give them the timesheet, they do everything, they keep track of sick leave, holiday pay, vacations, all.
I know this is getting into the weeds, but as far as ADP would be. As far as like. Electronic documents for like W4s and, you know, like, they're gonna have to get all that stuff completed by employees too during onboarding, would that be electronically, is that how that would be done?
Correct, yeah, there'd be forms that they would send out to me, yeah.
And people and staff would be able to update their own.
Yes, we have a portal they could go into to check everything, update all their documents, yeah.
Thanks.
Yes. Okay. Also outsourced is grant management with McKed. And then as I mentioned, the technical side of the planning is currently outsourced. And as part of the discussion for tonight is possibly outsourcing even the frontline customer service, So the city doesn't really become the middleman where we're just kind of passing on the questions and then things get lost in translation. So I don't know how much that'll cost, but it's a discussion.
And planning costs are paid by applicant, right?
Up to a certain point, if they're general inquiries, the city pays for it. Once they turn in some kind of application or permit, the official process begins and then it's paid for by the applicant. So there would be some costs that we would have to incur. Councilman Seeger,
Madam Mayor? Yeah, can I ask a quick question on that payroll?
Yes.
So, so for the Administrator Bennett, so the time cards are being submitted by the employees to who? Who is capturing all that data that then transfers it to ADP? Who on staff is doing that?
we haven't finalized that process, but probably the administrative services manager.
Okay,
Yeah, it would, you know, the employee would fill out their time card, it'd be reviewed by their supervisor and then go to one central location within City Hall. As of right now, probably the services manager.
okay, for the record, that's where a lot of time is spent and doing payroll. You know, when the payroll supervisor looks at the time cards and they go, wait a second, this doesn't match up because of a holiday or overtime or what have you. And there's a lot of back and forth to clean that up between that payroll supervisor and the department head and the employee. And that is the bulk of payroll. So just to be clear for council, yeah, ADP can do a few of those functions, but we still have a heavy load to carry regarding payroll every 2 weeks. Everyone needs to understand that.
Thank you.
Sounds good, Tyler?
Are time cards done on paper or electronically?
Right now, they're paper.
And how would an electronic service be a benefit, or would it be a benefit?
It could go either way. We have some employees that are old school and like the paper process. We have some of the newer employees that I think would flourish with the electronic version. So either way, but I think it'd be better record keeping, I believe, having an electronic version versus paper ones floating around everywhere. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
I would just, I mean, I didn't know if there would be a time savings by being electronic versus paper.
I don't know, City Recorder Woolsey's done most of the research, I don't, when it goes from us to ADP, I'm not sure what that transfer looks like. If it's an Excel spreadsheet they want, we have to type it in, or we can just scan over hard copies, I'm not sure what that process looks like yet. But we haven't completely finished our research on it.
For what it's worth, Gresham went to ADP about, I don't know, when I was working there, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago. And they used an app. Every employee who was an hourly employee had an app, and they would fill out their time card on an app. But again, that would then go to the department head. They would review that submission. Then that would get, all collected up and go to the payroll supervisor. They would go through all those before anything got sent to ADP for actual, calculating all the salary and the benefits and everything else.
Yep.
So it's a neat system, but again, it does require some training and, to get your employees up to speed. And there was a lot of resistance for the old school folks who like their paper time cards. So it's one of those change management things. And, happy to tell you my take on how you improve that or make that better. Get through it.
Councilmember Happy.
I was gonna say, from an auditing perspective, having the digital files, I think would be beneficial. And we don't use ADP, but we use something very similar that's competitor to ADP, and there's even GPS tagging for where people are punching in and out. We count people punching in and out from home, for example, and so at work. So, and then as far as the ways we've been doing payroll, all the taxes have been done in-house?
It's set up through the formula through Cascade. But we use Caselle's system to process it all.
I see,
Yeah.
got it. So we have some software that helps
Yes,
with it.
yep.
And but the filing was still done on our end, and just the calculations in Cascade.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, and so again, I imagine they're very similar products, that, you know, what we're using versus what you're using in our taxes. I don't sound totally hands off.
Yeah.
You know, the tax filings that are, quarterly, annual tax filings, all of our payments, and there's a huge tax, you know, time savings on that side of things, I can see.
Right.
But to Bernard's point, you know, garbage in, garbage out, you've got all the apps and everybody punching in and out, but someone still has to verify from the timesheets are accurate and make sense. So there's still some, and deductions, child support payments, those sorts of things that we have to withhold from their paycheck stuff, we manually process before it gets transmitted, at least for us.
Okay.
So.
And, you know, and there's other things like accounting for sick leave and, you know, and if they have, you know, some kind of disability, you know, it gets complex really fast. And so again, on our end, there's there's a lot of work that's required before you spit out an accurate payroll for your employees. And I just want to make sure we're all open-eyed about that.
Councilmember Baker?
Hi, thank you. I want to thank you, City Administrator Bennett, for looking at this and the job duties. And obviously, we have current staff. My question is, have you talked about some of these job duties with the current staff and who would be doing what? And will there need to be training involved? And what is the general consensus of staff to take on these job duties?
You cut out there a little bit, Denise, but I think I got the gist of your question. Staff are more than willing to take on these duties. I've talked to all of them. They know the situation the city is in and the direction I'm attempting to take it. And they're more than happy to do it. Training has already begun. Transitions from work that the CFO has been doing to city staff has already begun now that we've officially gotten ourselves caught up. And one audit under our belt, we are moving forward. But I think that answers your question.
Thank you. And then I sent late today to everyone, and I hope it can be printed. I updated the Oregon government salaries, low, high, and average for the job titles you're suggesting. And as our staff, I don't know if the deputy recorder has any reservations about legal. But how that factors in to their current salaries. And then also, it's very important to me, pay equity within our city. If we have, you know, most of our employees at low average because we're a small city without a lot of money, are we paying attention to all the salaries so that there is pay equity as far as we don't have anybody making top the lowest in Oregon? So that is on the document as well. I don't have every job title we have, pardon me. And then on that document, I have also printed a note from Hood River County Sheriff that I'm hoping folks will see tonight. But maybe between the workshop, that can be printed. I sent it to you, Marilyn. So that is important to me. And if people are sharing jobs, which might be unusual in the state of Oregon for cities, the only fairness I can think of is look at, are we meeting the salary range that our city is prepared to give all staff?
Councilmember Baker, you're cutting in and out quite a bit. So let's see, Councilmember Kempa.
Is it good if I
I guess
can I type in the
Councilmember
chat?
hang on. Hold on.
I see I feel like I can see the outlines of the vision that City Administrator Bennett has. And kind of where we're going with using CFO now and the outlines of the finance duties. I guess what I'm struggling to see are the benefits and the cost savings that would be brought to the city with going with a budget officer or a new finance officer, however, it's just, I guess that's where I'm really struggling. I don't know who can answer that question for me.
That's why we're having a discussion.
Well, I mean, I haven't heard any of that tonight.
Well, I think this is next page, we haven't
Right.
got to get where
We
he's
haven't-
got the 3 different solutions and the cost breakdown of each.
Right,
Is that where you're headed next or not?
Getting there, yeah.
and we've got 3 minutes, 4 minutes. Or we need to go on to the next one.
Yeah, so again, provided two org charts based off either in-house versus contracted. If it's in-house, the budget officer would report to the city, to the administrative services manager. They would still be the person overseeing city hall operations. They would be the department head. Whereas the contracted CFO would report to the city administrator. In terms of the cost, I think the salary is on the low end at 80,000, so. And then, budgeting 27,000, not knowing if the person will have a family versus, just their employee for the medical side, I went on the high end for family. PERS, workers' comp, paid leave organ, all that comes to 142,000. This is for full-time. I don't think we'd get a part-time budget officer. And then after talking with CFO Bondi, we're estimating, this is a rough guess, that, it'll take roughly 520 hours of work to get us to where we want to be. And at $200 an hour, that's $104,000. Once we get to where we want, that's audits updated, financial statements are continually to be presented monthly. We have the long-term planning in place. We have where we can just kind of keep tabs on it and not have to build it from scratch. Estimated that really they only need 240 hours a year to maintain it. And again, at $200 an hour, it's $48,000, whereas a budget officer would still be the $142,000 a year. My concern is if we hire a finance officer, they would get to the situation where it was before, bogged down in the day-to-day payroll, AP, utility billing, and then long-term planning would not get done, and we'd be right back where we are, or where we are. Questions on that?
Did that answer your question?
No.
No.
I mean, what is the benefit of having that person right here in the office? That's where I'm struggling is. Why should we pay somebody $142,000 to be in the building versus CFO $104,000? And be where you're. I mean, why spend that extra $40,000? That's what, I mean, I don't know what benefit that is. Like, what is the benefit of that $40,000?
I mean, based off my recommendation, there isn't a benefit. I mean, we should stick with the contracted CFO. That is what I'm recommending. Again, they could do accounts payable, payroll, but then be paying somebody, top dollar to process AP, and that's not what we need to spend our money on. With the way technology is, we've gone from rewriting minutes to now they're recorded. Everything's become digital. Everything is becoming, I don't know if easier is the right word, but more efficient. So we have freed up staff to do other items. We're not having a deputy city clerk spend 3 days a week retyping what's been recorded on video. It's not necessary.
Councilmember Happy?
And what do we have in the budget for contracted?
90,000.
90,000, so
Yeah.
a little under what really is required.
Correct, yes. Yeah. That may also, I mean, based off what we've done. CFO Bonnie now has one audit and one full year with the city under his belt. He has started to kind of redo things he did when he first got here, and the time it has taken him to do those processes is at least half as what it used to be. I mean, things are moving much more quickly than they were before. I will admit, getting to where we are at this point now took a lot longer and a whole lot more money than I thought.
Do we have an end date? Do they have a,
No, it is an open contract at this point. I think it's either a 30 or 60-day notice to end. I don't remember off the top of my head.
I think it would be really helpful if he said, I can do this in 3 months, 6 months. I would like to see an end date to say how much time it's gonna take. He should have a real good understanding of where we're at.
Yes, now, yeah, now we should, yeah.
Right.
When I, oh, sorry.
What sort of guarantees we are going to have that they stay below that 140,000?
That's a good question. I'd have to look at their contract again and see what we can do to ensure that work gets done. I mean,
I think,
It's just an estimate, right?
yeah, it really
Yeah.
has
Hours, but yeah.
right, and so it would be helpful to see a current end date. But I think we need to have this for further discussion because we've got 28 minutes to go on to the next. And we're gonna need every minute for this one. Was council okay with that? We can,
Just before we move on, thank you for the recap. During the budget review, we talked a lot about our audits, and I think what we heard at that time was we would have the 22-23 audit current before the end of the year and 23-22 audit before budget season.
that is the plan. I don't see why that would change.
In here, you did say, or I guess in the response to Bernard's question,
Yes.
you said that they initially said 22-23 will be done by August, and it doesn't look like it's gonna be ridiculous.
Correct. We have submitted everything we were supposed to Aldrich and Associates at the end of June. This is apparently their vacation season, so we're kind of at their mercy for when they complete the audit and present it to council. I checked in with them today and did not hear back on a timeline, so.
Got it. Okay, well, but we're not holding them up in the,
no,
thank you.
okay. Go on to,
Real quick, Mayor, is
Yeah.
it safe to say we can continue this discussion at a next meeting? Because, we really didn't get through this. Is that possible?
yes.
Thank you.
Can I read my staff report really quick?
Yes.
Okay. The extra patrol contract with the Hood River Sheriff's Office has not been reviewed or updated since 2016. Taking into account the time frame, the significant increase in cost for the fiscal year, and the verbal agreement to adjust the contract, both parties felt it was time to do a full review of the contract. Attached are the current contract and proposed contract for review. Only two real major changes. The date required for the county to provide a cost adjustment for the upcoming fiscal year moved from April 1st to March 15th. And request to have in-person quarterly reports from the sheriff's office to council. I know we talked about, I can't remember who brought it up, about kind of a revenue share in terms of speeding tickets or traffic enforcement. I've been told by both the city attorney and I believe the sheriff's office that's pretty much a no-go because of the state statutes. Am I wrong, Sheriff?
Yeah,
Maybe
it's,
from-
there's state statutes that talk about that revenue sharing, and there's. In the justice court in Cascade Locks, there's a lot more tickets run through there than just the city of Cascade Locks. I don't know. If the county has checked with the justice of the peace, if they would even be able to separate those.
Okay.
It's because tickets from all over the county and written by other agencies like the state police and things like that all run through that court.
There's actually just an article in the county, I just read that, it's an ODOT police station violations that are #1 into their process.
Absolutely,
Oh, yeah, by far.
absolutely.
Continue, go on with
That's all I had. I know, Councilor Emily Baker's hand up.
Councilmember Baker.
Hi, thank you, and thank you to the sheriff for the legal person from the League of Oregon Cities who asked what our revenue sharing was about traffic tickets. So I'm not sure what the League of Oregon Cities knows about that. And I was particularly interested in, should we get any traffic cameras? And I can check with League of Oregon Cities or others to see if there would be any revenue sharing from traffic cameras there. But I know that's not what we're talking about tonight. I just want to say where I.
Yeah, Councilmember Baker, can we get you to phone in on your phone? Cause it might be better connection. We won't be able to see you, but I think we'll be able to hear you. Does that sound all right? All right, great, thank
I
you.
would just,
Okay.
I kind of caught part of what you said, but I would, say that I think with a municipal court, you're able to do that revenue sharing, and with, versus a county court, a justice court. The statutes are probably written that way because it's a municipality and a municipal court.
Thank you.
Denise, I just sent you the phone number to call in.
Okay.
You can go ahead and mute and then hop on the phone. How's that? There you go. All right. Thank you. It's tough when you travel. What do you do? Okay. Did council get a chance to?
Sheriff Eagles, thanks for coming out to the night out on Tuesday. It was cool to see your staff there and you as well in your fancy hat. I guess my big question is, what benefit does Cascade Locks get for that 24 hours of service versus the other communities within the county that don't pay for this 24 hours of service? Like, what is it, the tangible pros that we get that the other communities aren't getting?
That's a great question. Thanks for the question. So, what the city of Cascade Locks has done historically in my entire career is that contract is for dedicated service. So typically our staffing can be anywhere from 1 to 3 deputies that are on duty, for the entire county. And so they may be in Parkdale, they may be in Odell. I mean, our biggest, concentration of people that we patrol is in the Odell area. And so when you have a contract that's guaranteeing that you have dedicated hours. If you didn't have the contract, you would still get service from the sheriff's office. The sheriff's required to provide service, but it's based on resources. So whatever resources the sheriff has, then that's what the city gets. And just as an example, so cities aren't required to have policing services, are not required to have a police department, but say that the city of Hood River decided one day that they didn't want to have a police department anymore and they didn't want a contract. I would have to provide that service, the law enforcement service in the city of Hood River. But they would get what they get, because if they didn't have a contract, then we wouldn't be able to have the appropriate staff. And so we would be left with the same amount of staff that we are today to patrol another 8,000 people. And so what this contract does is provides dedicated service, additional service, and guaranteed service. Because historically this city has wanted to provide that extra level to the community here.
One question I keep hearing is that we pay for it in taxes, we pay for it, so why are we paying it more? I know you kind of answered it, but.
Yeah, so
that's a specific question that many people have.
Absolutely. Yeah, and again, it goes back to you're absolutely right. I mean, those are people are paying for the base service, for the in the taxes, there's a myriad of things that we provide that we have to provide by law. Part of that is the enforcement piece, the patrol. But the county pays $2.5 million a year for jail. there's 911, there's a tax that people pay for 911. There's our civil, there's a search and rescue piece. I have to provide all of those statutorily. There's transports, there's court security. All of that stuff is mandated by the sheriff, and so you get those base services, and everybody has access to those. And then, you know, on top of it, is this 24-hour a week contract, and so that's because the city has chosen to have a higher level of coverage and provide more public safety services to this community, and so that's in addition to what we would be able to provide baseline.
Councilmember Happy?
Can you provide some historical context for how long we've had this contract for additional services?
I can't give you the exact date, but it goes way back to at least the early 1990s. There was a time when there was 2 deputies that were assigned here, and they were actually resident positions. So the deputies were required to live in the city limits of Cascade Locks. And then that went down to 1 deputy, probably about 90, I'm gonna guess about 96, 95, probably. And it was a resident until 1997 or 8. So it goes back, you know, 30 plus years anyway. As far back as I'm aware, you know, in the recent past, so long standing.
And I'd heard at one point in time, the sheriff's office offered a stipend for deputies that lived in town that were filling this role.
That's correct.
Yeah, is there any thought of maybe bringing that back?
It was-
to encourage someone to move into town?
It was in the contract actually, and I can't remember if it was in the last iteration of the contract, and that was set between the city and in the county. If a deputy lived here, and I can't remember if that's in the older contract, but it was contractual piece.
I'd recommend we look up that information and maybe, I mean, it's not like it's required, right? They just would get a stipend if
Correct.
they lived in town.
That's
correct.
Yeah.
And I understand housing is limited and there's not enough housing anywhere in the county. So it'd be hard to make that a requirement, but it would be great to incentivize somebody to live in the city. You know, I could see, you know, a bar fight breaking out at 2 AM, you know, and if someone's got to respond, I don't know where our current deputy comes from. If he's coming from the Dalles, it'd be a long time for him to get here.
Yeah, they wouldn't be in the Dalles at 2 AM, but you know, and if with this contract, yeah, oftentimes on the weekends is when we're covering, so it'd be highly likely they'd be around, but you know, the other thing is several years ago, when probably 6 years ago, I'm guessing, we had made a change to the way that we're filling this, because we used to have a deputy assigned, 1 deputy assigned. And there was pros and cons to it, but it was a bit problematic. And so I came to the council and there was an agreement that we were going to basically put that in our rotation. So deputies are able to bid on doing the Cascade Locks patrol every quarter. So theoretically, that person that's in that role could change every quarter. A lot of times the deputies that are working it like to work it multiple times a year because there's a lot of benefits to the schedule, and there's stability and things like that with the schedule. So having that stipend back in there would be, I mean, we could do it, but it would be a little bit problematic, just because we're rotating deputies now.
But it might incentivize someone to live in the city and then keep picking up that.
It might.
Yeah, you talked about housing. I believe that there's no longer a requirement that the deputies live inside the county, correct? They can live outside.
Yeah, that's never been a requirement since I've worked here.
So we could have a deputy that's assigned to Cascade Locks that does live in the Dalles.
Absolutely.
And I guess that was my point, was that if someone received a call, you know, after hours to respond to Cascade Locks, they might be outside this, you know, in the Dalles.
Yeah, but we would have coverage for another deputy would respond.
Councilmember Seeger, did you have your hand up?
I think Councilman Seeger had his hand up first, but thank you.
All right, I'll go. Thanks, Sheriff, for coming out. So you might have heard we had a pretty vigorous debate this past budget adoption process regarding y'all's services. And some of the citizens made the comment that, you know, we pay our property tax to the county. What are we getting for it? And you talked to that a little, but you know, what I didn't say, because I'm not here to defend the county, but what I was thinking is like, the county does more than jail and those other things. I mean, you guys do health, you guys do a lot of services that those property taxes are funded. Can you just give us a quick overview of whatever you think all the other services the county provides? So our citizens and frankly, maybe some of our county have a better appreciation of what the county does on behalf of those property taxes we pay every year.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you're right. We get a portion of those property taxes that people pay. You know, you hit on it. We've got a health department. We've got planning and building. We've got public works. You know, the roadways outside of the city, but around the city, you know, are maintained by our public works department. We've got a prevention department. We've got a juvenile department, district attorney's office. I mean, the list goes on. There's
you got the assessor's office, the elections office, all those things,
absolutely.
right? I mean,
yeah, records and assessment, budget and finance. And so there's 110 people working for the county to provide all of those services, or roughly.
Right.
Thank you. Councilmember Baker.
So you said two questions. Number one, we did have it in the contract in the past that they lived in Cascade Locks. Is that something we could put in our contract again? Yes or no?
Yeah, it wasn't a requirement. It's a stipend.
Okay. And then I downloaded from the Hood River County Sheriff Department today these two sentences. Deputies respond to all areas of Hood River County. Additionally, patrol fulfills a contract with the City of Cascade Locks with a full-time deputy assigned to provide additional enforcement presence. And I'm thinking full-time is 40 hours. Is that right?
So the contract is 24 hours.
And the statement I just read said, from the Sheriff's Department said, a full-time deputy assigned to provide additional enforcement. What does that mean?
That we have a deputy that's a full-time employee and their job is to fulfill this contract. So the issue with committing to 40 hours a week with one person in this line of work, it's not realistic because we would not want to say that we could do that because we know we couldn't follow through. I mean, just the training hours alone, there's 84 hours in our training cycle that you have to have training that takes deputies off the road, that takes deputies out of the county. They have time off, they have illnesses, we have injuries. And so committing to 40 hours a week with one person is not possible because we employ humans and they have to have time off and it's just not reality. And so 24 hours is a lot more realistic, and that's why we've had that contract in place for years at that level. And that's kind of the understanding that we have with the city is that there's going to be things that happen. There's going to be things that take deputies away. We may have events, we may have major crimes, we have something that pulls them out of the city. And it can be something as even close to the city of Cascade Locks. We may have a search and rescue at Eagle Creek, which we see 20 times a year. And they're the closest deputy, and so they're going to be out of the county because it's an emergency situation, and they're going to be out of the city, I should say, out of the city contract. And so we have to be able to account for those things. And so it is a full-time person. It's a position that's dedicated to that. And so our goal is at least 24 hours of coverage. There's been times where that's been tough, but there's also times where we've certainly exceeded that number.
So the 24 hours, is that physically in town, 24
Correct.
hours? Is that including reporting as well? Or is that combo?
Generally not when they leave the area. We do have an office, a satellite office here that's used sometimes. And so they can sit there, they're still available for calls and, they can write reports related to their work here. But generally, no, when somebody physically leaves this area, they would come off of that. Sometimes they may stay on, the city's patrol, like if you made an arrest in town and they're running them, it's on the same call related, but a lot of times they'll just say they're leaving the area.
And then, one sec. So another question that came up with a citizen is they say, on the 24 hours, 1 week, let's say because of an arrest or something, that 24 hours turned into 32. So the next week, does it start over at 24 or are you adjusting those hours every week?
No, it starts over. It's,
Okay.
yeah, it's 24 hours a week. And that's the minimum, that's what we shoot for, that's the minimum.
Okay.
And if, there is an excess, then there is, and I will tell you right now that even though we don't have a contract and you're not paying, we still have a deputy assigned here.
Councilmember.
Yeah, I think, I appreciate the additional information and clarification around the 40 versus 24, because it was my understanding and I misunderstood that extra 16 hours was for commute time to get back and forth. That's not the case.
That can be part of it, absolutely. There's just, the point was that if we committed to say that we would take one person and do 40 hours a week, we just know that that's not reality. And so I would not want to overcommit to something like that when I know how often deputies get pulled off and all the requirements that pull them away from assignments.
I mean, I'm just thinking if we were able to find somebody, there's a lot of ifs here, that was living in town and didn't have to make the commute every day and they have a satellite office here. Could we potentially get that closer to 32 hours? I think 40 is unrealistic, but is there a way that we could, have less commute time and have more time or presence of somebody in town?
Yeah, I mean, commute time really isn't a lot, because, we have deputies that they're in the county when they start their shift. And so, even if they live out of county, they're in the county when they start their shift. And so, I mean, you're talking 15, 20 minutes, to drive down here, so.
So I guess what you're saying is, no, it's not realistic to think that there'd be a way to increase that from 24 to 30.
No, I would, I think we could certainly sit down and talk about that. I'd be really open to that conversation and see, but again, I don't want to say that I could provide something and then not be able to follow through, because that's not fair.
Just, looking at the increases we've seen after, we all understand costs go up, and I don't think anybody wants to diminish our appreciation for the sheriff's office in any way. But it would be nice to, meet halfway, like we're gonna understand the costs are going up, but could we get more coverage? Could we get 24 to 32 hours? I think it would be, I think we'd have more support from the citizens, if they felt like there was more of a presence.
Yeah, like I said, I'm certainly open to talk about that.
Thanks.
Councilmember Seeger, you had your hand up?
Yes, ma'am. Thanks. So real quick, for the council's benefit, I too am supportive of amending our contract to have the stipend in there and see if we can't get a deputy living in Cascade Locks. And then the question I had for the sheriff, I actually emailed these to you, to our office. I'm not sure if you saw, but I just want to see if I can get a quick reaction from you. Can you tell us, how does our crime rate, for the first 6 months of 2024 compared to the first 6 months of 2023? I know crime rate is, it's a broad term, but maybe you could spend a little time talking about property, domestic violence, illegal drug distribution, et cetera. And then if you see any changes, what do you attribute those to? Do you have a sense on what, using those comparable timelines, how Cascade Locks is doing from a crime perspective?
Sure. Yeah, I did see those questions. Unfortunately, I got them about lunchtime and my afternoon was packed, so I didn't have a lot of time to do analysis because that would take some significant time. I did kind of take a cursory look at numbers. I can tell you that, you know, this year, the calls for service, so those are just the incoming calls to our office in the city of Cascade Locks, are down about 8%, so they're lower, a little over 8%. This time last year, there was 501 calls for service, and this year there's about 419. There's about 145 traffic stops this year and 135 last year by this time. And then, but the thing that is very significant is the crime reports, the actual reports that our deputies are taking for crimes that have been committed in the city, or victims, reports from victims has gone down very significantly this year. So it's we're only about 67% of what we're at last year. So there's 96 crime reports taken last year, and there are 64 thus far, 65 so far this year. You know, I can make some guesses, and I think you know, but it's anecdotal. And I will tell you that you see these ebbs and flows annually everywhere, and you can have, you know, say for instance, up on Mount Hood at our like our snow parks, we can see a spike in property crime because we have crews come through one season from Portland and break out a bunch of people's windows and steal purses, and so we'll have, you know, 20 car break-ins, and our property thefts will be extremely high, and then the next year we don't see that. And so, you know, I don't know, they could be arrested, they may have moved on, we don't know what that's necessarily attributed to, but that, you know, spikes like that. And honestly, you know, we're still in a small area, and so singular events or just a, you know, handful of events can really impact numbers and really impact percentages and things like that. But I will tell you, one difference last year is we were down 66% in our enforcement staff. There was a lot of times that were uncovered in the county. There were a lot of times where we had one deputy on for the entire county, and sometimes there was one sheriff, and that was it. Me working, and I covered the contract sometimes down here last summer, and so the number one crime deterrent is presence, and it's seeing that car driving around town. That is the number one deterrent, and so the more presence that you have, the more impact that you're going to have in communities, and that's why we tell our folks, make sure that you're out and about and are seen, get out and talk to people. Those things deter crime.
Thank you.
That out.
I know.
We've got 2 minutes.
I've had my turn to ask questions. I don't want to take up the last 2 minutes, but other people have questions. We had some concerned citizens present to council specifically about crosswalks and you know, traffic, you know, passing other vehicles that are stopped, waiting for people at crosswalks and them going around them. Have those reports made their way to you? Have you heard about them? And is there anything that's been done to try to increase awareness around pedestrian safety?
I have not heard anything about that. However, I will say, historically, we used to get some grant money and we would actually do some crosswalk stings, and we would do them down here because of the amount of traffic, particularly in the summer, and the safety for people crossing the street. I haven't seen that grant for years. We could take a look and see if we could do that again, because it was pretty effective. But the flip side of that is a lot of times the people coming through are not going to be coming back because they're, you know, passing through town and this is a stop on a vacation or something. So long-term impact, you know, isn't necessarily, you may not necessarily see that. But and the other thing is we can report that out to our deputies, so when they're down here, they can watch for that. And we certainly have a deputy, you know, here during daylight hours when it's busy, and we can just kind of look at high times to do enforcement on that.
And the person that reported that to me, I recommended call non-emergency, report it, and to reach out to the deputy directly to let them know what you saw going on, so that way they can be aware. It'd be great if we could look into see if we could find more information about that grant still available.
Yeah.
we definitely have, I think that the perception is we have people that are commuting and they're cutting off the freeway and then just jetting through town and hopping on the bridge and heading across, and so we're just in a hurry.
Okay. All right, we are out of time.
All right, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
For those of you online, this work session meeting will be closing and the regular session virtual will be starting in just a minute. Thank you.